that sort of ability to have a bunch of different interests, passions, whatever, and juggle those, especially at that age, if I am any sort of person today, it is a large part because of the ability to harness that trait. I definitely see the roots of that at Crescent.
I'm Agnes Stowicki, Managing Editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private and independent schools to bring you insights into school programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administration. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
I think Crescent really teaches you that if you get ahead of it and you're interested in finding it, there really is opportunity everywhere. It sometimes won't be presented in the most obvious way, but that's what makes seeking opportunity so hard and what makes those that find it so excellent. I think that if you put your mind to really finding chances to pursue new things, try new things, eventually something will strike. And if you have that mindset and learn that mindset, because it's not really something that you can be just shown how to do, it's something you have to learn on your own endogenously, I think it is something that kind of sticks with you forever. That's certainly something when I look back at Crescent and I think, oh, in this opportunity I learned how to do this. In this situation I learned how to manage these two things. It's an environment that sort of fosters the ability to have a bunch of interests, have a bunch of tastes, and try and pursue them all. I always joke that Crescent was the kind of place where you could ask a student, what's your favorite thing? And they would just say yes. Crescent gives, in my case gave, but in my understanding still gives, an opportunity to really run with something if you feel as though it sort of grips you. And what I mean by that is if you find something that you really want to be good at or are interested in or want to learn more about, regardless if it's something that you're naturally inclined towards or are talented in or exposed to before, Crescent really is an opportunity that allows you to bring those things along. It doesn't necessarily hand it to you, like you have to pursue it on your own. I just think that one of the things about Crescent being sort of having this relatively small school feel, despite being relatively large, certainly well endowed, is that if you're interested in creating something, pursuing something, or turning yourself into a better version of yourself, whether that's joining some sort of team or club or some sort of scholastic aptitude or something like that, the resources are there. It's just a matter of really setting your mind to it. I think this is important because I'm sure we can all, anyone who's watching this video, whether you're 7 or 70, can think of a time when you weren't good at something but you wanted to be. And if you had just not thought about the fact that you can change what you're good at or what you're interested in or what you're exposed to, just on either a whim or an interest, what you'd be shutting yourself off from. I think that the Crescent environment really enables you to not just expose yourself to things, but really dig in just deep enough to be dangerous. I think that's where passions are made, skills are born, and people are really shaped. And frankly, I think that's something Crescent does really well. I like the way this question is phrased because I've always sort of disliked and kind of felt it dangerous to say that there's some sort of Crescent spirit that we all sort of conform to or there's some archetype to which we should strive. I think one of the best things that Crescent does is the heterogeneity within the way people think, act, what they bring to the table and sort of what they're interested in and how they perform in those interests, whether you're a student or a staff member at the school. I guess all of those words serve to say that I think Crescent would be best described as the kind of friend that I look to when I want someone who's going to be a real person. That's going to be someone who's nuanced because when you're honest and when you're honest with yourself and others, you are nuanced. You react to things in ways that surprise you when you're following your true principles that you may not even know off the top of your head but are in there. It's someone who's open, who's willing, who's honest and who's forthright with how they feel and how they want to help you solve your problems. And I think above all, it's someone that's really willing to try new things and has that gregariousness that I think espouses people that push myself to be the best me I can be. That's what I think Crescent does, the true ideal of the school. It's not one person. It's not one sort of archetype of a quiet hard worker or a loud leader. It's just someone that knows that sort of internal code for being a good thinker, member of whatever group or society you're in, and above all, someone who's honest with yourself. I think that's if Crescent were to be a friend, that's what I would think they would be like, and frankly, that's kind of someone I would want to be friends with. The sense that you're never truly going to be alienated from something that you want to try again and really get good at, or maybe something that didn't go so well the first time, whether that's an interaction with a person, a subject, a school, a sport, or something. Crescent is definitely a repeated game because, as I mentioned, it sort of has that, with all the big school facilities and gifts and resources that comes with, it still has that small school feel. You really can't just say, oh, that didn't go well, I'm going to avoid it forever. That's just not how it's structured. And frankly, prior to the age of 17, I think that's probably how your life should be run. I still try and do it that way. Don't run from your problems. Don't run from things that didn't go well the first time. If there's a structural reason to avoid something, sure, but a lot of the time that's just because you need another go at it. I think that is something that, it may not be something that people will put their hands up and say, oh, this is really what unites us about Crescent. Perhaps that's, the arts events or sports teams or something like that, or the AP curriculum or something like that, or a great teacher. I think those are the things that make us Crescent humans together. But in terms of what really, I think if we really sat down and thought about it, what defines us is the fact that you really can't just do a one and done at Crescent, whether that's with a person or an aptitude. And I think that is part of what makes us a relatively resilient, sort of gregarious, outgoing, and above all, just striving group of people. Just in terms of character, I think that's what sets us apart. Be a good, honest, hardworking person, but also recognize that isn't easy. I know that I actually like our 4 core values a lot. I mean, they were all over the place when I was there. So I guess if you want the brochure answer, that's it. But if I wanted to boil those down, I think they all really describe different aptitudes of someone who is not only like a good person, a hardworking person, someone who's honest, someone who behaves to like good norms, is a good teammate, whatever, but also realizes that that's hard. And there are times when those things are going to be challenged. The seemingly easier thing to do is to break one of those, is maybe to do something, less than honest or whatever, just to give an example. And I think realizing that everyone sort of has to pay into that sort of shared social contract that we have that makes the school work, that did, certainly, I think is a big step to becoming not just a good teammate and friend and whatever, classmate, but is a big part to realizing that the best humans are those that don't judge people by their worst moments, and can really see character and find ways to bring the good character out of someone those circumstances may try otherwise. That goes for yourself and that goes with others. I think ultimately that is what the 4 core values boil down to. But the other thing is that, I think a lot of people could disagree and offer different interpretations. One of the things about Crescent is that there's always room to interpretation, and that's something that's tolerated and encouraged. So I'd be curious to hear what other people had to say about this, and I hope that they discuss it in the future. But that's my take. It's all about paying into that system and your ability to help others do the same. You don't have to be loud to be heard, I guess is the right way to put it. This was something that I think, certainly going in, you think, oh, it's a big boys' school, all the boisterous people are going to be the popular ones, the ones with all the friends on the teams doing well and everything. They're going to be the ones that get all the attention, do all the learning, because it's just easier for them to receive attention because they're louder. I truly believe that the way our student body works, just by virtue of size and structure, and as I've said, the fact that everyone is going to be interacting with everyone in so many different ways, whether it's through classes or clubs or teams or something like that, it's really hard to sort of become sequestered off at Crescent, in my experience and from what I've seen. It really enables people to not only find their voices, but for other people to find a way to give them space and give them a place to do that. So in a sense, I think even those who are quiet still have their moment to be loud, or maybe it's their quietness that makes them all the much more important to hear when they do raise it. I think that that's something that really only happens in a healthy community with the right size and the right setup. I think that's something that Crescent does well. Whether it lit a fire under me or in me, it definitely got me going, I think. Crescent does a really good job of showing you how big the world is, and not necessarily how small you are, but how much bigger you can be in it. whether that's through size or volume or what you pull from it or put into it or gain or learn or whatever. I guess what I'm trying to say is it really shows you where you can go. Obviously, the path is not clear. I think Crescent actually does a pretty good job of showing you that like it's going to be hard because nothing worth doing is easy. But pressure is a privilege, so like go for it. That's certainly something that I carry forwards. I've crystallized it into that little phrase that I found there. But I think it's something that Crescent doesn't teach you explicitly, but very implicitly through the time you spend there. And I think that's the only way to learn that. And it's certainly something I can think of living without. Just a mentality of like, really find out what's out there and then don't be afraid to go get it. I got that from Crescent and I carry that forward. I don't know whose fault this is. Maybe it's just part of my nature or human nature, but I think it's very hard to remember and very easy to forget that no one's vanilla. Everyone's got a flaw, everyone's got problems they're fighting. And the reason that's important is because, especially when you're growing up, but like, I feel this way to this day, and I'm sure many people watching this do too. Sometimes when you're struggling, you feel as though your problems are uniquely your own. And I feel as though the worst thing that you can possibly feel or say to yourself is, this is easy for everyone and hard for me. Why? Something's wrong, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm hopeless, or whatever. It's very easy to get yourself into that spiral, especially when you're young, and especially when you're trying new things. And I think definitely something that if I had just found a way to ignore that, maybe more opportunity would have come out of Crescent or something like that. I'm not sure. It's very easy to, I'm not saying that it's done institutionally, but like, people often get put on pedestals of success, and it's easy to find ways to differentiate yourself in between them and you. Oh, they're like this because they have this. Oh, they're like this because they were always this way. I've never been that way, so how can I be like that? And I think just finding a way to break out of that and saying, why not me? Like, seriously, why not? Let's go for it. And realize that everyone has problems, and that yours are not necessarily, maybe they're unique, but they're not, so remote that they're unsolvable, is something that I think can set people up for a lot more success and, frankly, happiness. And also peace in a way. That's something I still struggle with to this day, certainly. I think it's just by virtue of being an externally motivated, like, striving person. But I think that's something that, if I could be a curriculum editor or Crescent or whatever, I would find a way to integrate that. Just remembering that, not only is no one perfect, but, like, no one finds anything worth doing easy either. We all know that, like, we can point out, this person did something wrong or whatever. But, like, I think it's important to remember that, there's a means to everything, and just because something is tough doesn't mean that you're any less well-suited to it than someone else. Above all, and I can tell you, like, countless examples about this, relating to this. Like, if you want to do something well, and if you want to succeed in something, or if you love it, that's, like, the most important thing out there, beyond any sort of aptitude or ability. Those help, but they're not deal makers or deal breakers. Graduation and sort of looking back shows you that the problems or the questions or whatever that seemed like the most pressing things in the world, because they were at the time, can either quickly become inconsequential quickly or maybe weren't as big as you thought they were. Graduation gives you a sense of scale, and I think that part of the issue with when you're in secondary school or whatever and looking up the mountain is that it looks very, very tall. I think that looking back, a lot of the things that maybe I thought that I cared about very, very much were maybe not as crucial, and some things that I neglected weren't, didn't get enough attention or something like that. That's obviously easy to do with hindsight. I think the really interesting thing is when you look back and you say, okay, what could I have done in situ that would have made me realize that at the time? I think that's the difference between, correcting your mistakes on a test and actual growth. And that's something that I think I've learned. It's full of opportunity. I think the structure likens itself to having a good sort of community feel and a community support system. And then I think most importantly, even though it's 109 years old, it's still very much a work in progress. I like the fact that at Crescent there was never so much, well, this is how we've always done it, so, ergo it should be so. I think there's always been room, and I always felt that there was room for, if you can justify a change, or if you can justify a way that the world should be different, or want to know why it is the way it is, that's always there. I think that's a sign of a certain humility that Crescent has that I think is valuable, and, frankly, I would really, really look hard at other schools to make sure that they have too if you're considering them. Because above all, I think education should be dynamic, and I think that, just as the students are going to grow up, the school should grow up, maybe not at the same time scale, but it should grow up with itself too. That's something I always felt that Crescent was either doing or had the ability to do. Same advice I would give the kids, frankly, which is something that I think you learn. I certainly learned like in science classes on the track team all over the place. Good things don't feel good all the time. Like, don't expect this to be easy or pleasant or feel fulfilling all the time. Just trust the process to a certain extent. Always be questioning. Always make sure that something is justified. Don't just settle in and say, well, it worked for someone else. It worked for me. But think to yourself, is this worth taking a shot at and just seeing how things play out? Definitely let, the system justify itself. And if it needs to be changed, it needs to be changed. But be willing to have that conversation with the status quo. At the same time, challenge it. Be raucous. Be questioning. Be all these things that you would want your student to be. But yeah, just realize that. I think keep that in mind. That is a spectrum, and that is a two-way street. Things do not feel good all the time. If you can find a way to wake up every day smiling, ready to go, and go to bed exhausted every day, I think you're doing Crescent right.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.